Yo guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's a big day. We're making our first One Piece video on our channel. If you don't know, I've been watching One Piece for the better part of like
7. I just bit right on the highway.
I promise you I didn't mean to do that. I promise. I wanted to make a video on YouTube and I was thinking, where do I start from? What do I talk about first? And I was like, I want to talk about one of my favorite episodes, 405 from the Sabaody arc. What makes this episode so great for me is that it shows us that this show isn't all fun and games. Up until this point, the Straw Hats were never really in danger in some way, but this arc changed that, especially this ending. Obviously, this video will have spoilers, so please, if you haven't watched One Piece, please click away. And yeah, but if you have, stick around and yeah, we'll talk about this. At the time of this recording, I'm still on the Fishman Island arc, so please refrain from spoilers in the comments if you're gonna talk about this. This episode has stayed in my head throughout my entire One Piece journey so far, and I was like, that's when I need to make this video. This episode is that good. Again, what I love about this episode is that there are a lot of callbacks to previous big moments in the show prior, from like episode 37 with the walk to Arlong Park, or in Water 7, or in Thriller Barrack, which I'll touch on this video, but like that's why I love this episode so much. In episode 404, we see how strong the antagonists really are, with Kizaru and Santomaro showing up, and then obviously we know who Kuma is. Kuma at this point in the story is a very soft-spoken individual, but you know the extent of his power because of the things that we have seen in Thriller Barrack prior. We know how strong Kuma is, but for Kizaru and Santomaro, we haven't seen them too much in the story at this point. Now, this is one of the key things I love about this episode. This is the first time Luffy has ever backed down from a fight. Not that because he thinks he can't win, but he knows at this point in time, after what they've just endured with Thriller Barrack and not having enough resting period and stuff like that, he realizes his crew is not ready for this fight. He recognizes the difference in power scaling right now. Him screaming at his crew to just run away and escape and regroup. It shows Luffy's dedication to his crew, and it shows his leadership and intelligence when it comes to battle and stuff like that. For all the goofy moment Luffy provides us with in the show, when it comes to stuff like this, it's one of the reasons that's why I love his character so much. He is one of the most intelligent people when it comes to being emotional and stuff like that. The order has been given from Luffy for everyone to escape, and everyone is doing just that. Everyone's running away. However, the PX-1 is targeting the weakest side of the group so far. This moment was an eye-opener, not only for me as a viewer, but also for the Straw Hats as well, because what I love about this scene in particular, it just shows, again, the difference in power. The PX-1 is chasing Usopp and Zoro right now, and then Sanji does his fiery kick, right? At this point in the show, that was like Sanji's like bread and butter, like an absolute guaranteed win of a shot, because we've seen it happen time again in Thriller Barrack and also in Water 7. He does it to the PX-1, obviously Warlord Kuma variant, whatever the hell you want to call it. And then he hits the attack, and in my head, I'm thinking, yes, the Straw Hats are going to get away, they're going to be fine. And then the PX-1 just gets up as if that was nothing. And I'm just like, yo, what the hell are these guys? And at this point, Sentomaru is absolutely dogging Luffy right now. At the time, we're like, how is this happening? But obviously, Haki's been explained now to an extent, so I understand why it actually happens. But at this time, I'm like, how is Luffy losing this easily? At this point, the situation is looking so dire for the Straw Hats. It's looking so rough, to the point where Chopper goes into monster mode because he doesn't even know what to do anymore. And even then, I'm thinking, okay, yes, maybe this is their saving point. And even that doesn't seem to work. And then the real Kuma pops out right in front of Zoro, and this is when I'm like, oh shit, it's about to go down.
Doro no omae no jihi no okage de da. Zoro, 喋ってる場合じゃねえよ。早く。旅行するならどこへ行きたい？
I'm not gonna lie, that was a killer ass scene from Kuma right there. That was a baller ass line, bro. It was tough. And then that episode ends with Kuma just swiping Zoro out of the map, just like that. That's it. That's literally all that happens. And the craziest part, as I was watching it, my reaction was literally like with the Straw Hats as well, because I was very shocked, like, oh my gosh, they just lost Zoro, just like that. I can't believe this. The Straw Hats are in disbelief. I'm in disbelief because I'm like, there's no way that our crew is losing. I'm going to say our crew because, damn it, I'm a part of this crew as well. I was shocked because they just lost one of their crew members like it was nothing. And I was like, wait a second. Is this actually going to go down this way? I've said it before, but there was never a point in the show up until this point where I really thought the Straw Hats were in any proper danger. Water 7 showed us a glimpse of it with Aikija, and that was just to show that Luffy, like, yo, there's levels to this shit. At the start of the arc where we meet Akiji, he shows Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji like, yeah, you guys are nowhere close to me. Y'all better step down real quick. And then in Water 7, later on in Eni's lobby, that's when we hit Luffy with Gear 2. And in that monologue, he says, yo, when I lost him, I realized I had to get stronger. I needed to do this for my crew. And he gave us that monologue, and it made sense because we recognize, like, yeah, there are different level powers in this show, and Luffy has to get stronger in order to keep up with this. And he recognized that. But upon seeing Zoro disappear, he's like, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on here? And that's what I loved about episode 404, because it set up 405 so well. Oh my goodness. No, episode 405 does not start off very light at all. I think the reaction from the crew where Zoro disappears and everyone is just screaming and everyone's just panicking and everything like that, it just perfectly encapsulates the moment that is happening with the Straw Hats right now. What made this entire moment truly depressing and everything like that, I feel it's because Kuma is a very soft-spoken individual, like I've mentioned before. He doesn't really say much. Even when he attacks the PX1, he doesn't really just say anything. He just says, stay on my way, and then he disappears that one. And then he just continues to do what he was doing beforehand. And it's just like, what is the motive? Like, what are you doing here? Do not get me started on the representation of the bubbles bursting, because after he disappears, bro, there we see another bubble burst. My friend said it in such a perfect way what the bubbles really represent. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to give him a shout out, because when I heard about this, I was like, yeah, I got to put this in the video. Not only do the bubbles represent the Straw Hats, they also represent the innocence of a kid. The kid being Luffy in this moment. And the way that my friend described it was like, as a kid, when you're playing with bubbles and stuff like that, it's all fun and games and it's all laughs and giggles. And then one just pops. There is quite literally nothing you can do. You cannot change time. You can't do anything. That is it. The bubble is gone. And in this moment, you see that a second crew member has just gone in the blink of an eye, and there's absolutely nothing Luffy can do. And you see the absolute shock and horror on his face. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm losing and I can't do anything. And it just adds to the desperation of the situation. At this point, the Straw Hats have given up on really escaping because they've just seen two of the crew members disappear. So at this point, they're going to stand down and fight. And I don't blame them for that. That's the only natural human thing to do. I feel like Sanji in this moment, for him, this was different for him. Cast your mind back to Thriller Barrack where the crew was basically decimated and it was just literally Sanji and Zoro up against Kuma. And then even at this point, Sanji couldn't even do anything because Zoro knocks him out unconscious, and that's when nothing happens with Zoro. Like, cast your mind back to that moment. Sanji doesn't want to feel like useless again to this point where like he can't stand up to Kuma and he can't do anything. He tells Usopp to go and then he's gonna stand down and fight Kuma himself. For Sanji here, it will serve as like a redemption arc for him to redeem himself for what happened in Thriller Barrack and for him to save his crew even though his crew is losing at this point. All of that hype moment and it still doesn't result into anything because Kuma still gets Usopp, and I feel bad for Usopp because like he tried everything he could at this point. Flamestar, he was trying his best, but what else can he realistically do? You know, it the voice acting in this episode again was absolutely top tier. Luffy screaming and begging to I felt that. To this day, I still feel it because, bro, it was genuine. It was sincere. And just like that, straight after, Sanji charges right at Kuma again, but this time he doesn't repel. He just disappears him. That's another crew member gone. That's another bubble gone. What else can they do? When Luffy hit his gear 2 here, I was like, yes, okay, here we go. Luffy's finally going to be able to save the remaining people in his crew now. This is it. Boy, was I wrong. Because again, what this arc was trying to tell me and show me was like, there was levels to this shit. There were levels to it. I said it was Sanji before, but Luffy's gear 2 was like his go big or go home kind of move. When Luffy goes into gear 2 at this point in the story, you're like, okay, yeah, it's a guaranteed win. He's gonna thug it out. He hits Kuma with that shit. That shit go wonk. It don't even work. It don't even work. The second that Kuma repels him, he wastes no time. There goes Frankie. Frankie just like that, gone. There goes another bubble. And straight after Frankie's gone, Kuma wastes no time in targeting Nami. And I think this disappearance was the one that like affected me the most when I seen it. Like, as I said before, there are layers to this episode, and I feel like this one was the most layered in its own way. At this point, cast your mind way back to the early start of the show, back in East Blue, back during the walk to Arlong Park. For Arlong's arc, the whole thing was Luffy never wanted to give his straw hat to anybody. He didn't want it like, this is my treasure, leave me alone, don't do any of this. This means a lot to me. Even when Luffy hears about the quote-unquote betrayal of Nami when she stabs Usopp in this arc, even Luffy doesn't believe it. He's like, no way a crew member of mine would do something like that. That's cap. I'm gonna take a nap. I don't believe this. And then it gets to the point where Nami asks him for help. He's like, please Luffy, help me. After she harms herself in her arm and everything like that, she asks Luffy for help. To which Luffy says, finally, and he's like, let's go. He puts the straw hat on Nami's head, tells the crew, let's go. And then we have the iconic scene. That was the first time Nami ever asked Luffy for help in the entire show. However, in Sabaody, this will mark the second time Nami has asked Luffy for help. But what makes this one more heartbreaking is she never really got to finish that statement. Luffy screaming and crying out her name, and it's a very heartbreaking scene to see. It's so natural. Even Luffy at this point has abandoned his whole thing of escaping. He charges right at Kuma, and I don't blame him. I feel like this moment where Luffy just charged Akuma was just like another moment that went a bit unnoticed, because like there was no like gum anything at this point. He literally just attacked him out of pure frustration and anger. There was no attack to it. Was literally just a straight punch. And then shortly after that, one of my faves in Chopper gets disappeared. And what makes this one a bit sore for me is that Chopper wasn't even himself. It was the monster point of Chopper. So like, I don't even think he was fully aware as to what was happening in this moment, which makes it that much heartbreaking that Luffy had to see this happening right in front of his eyes. And then you see, here's the thing with Robin's disappearance. This one is probably the hard-hitting one. Even though I said it with Nami, I feel like this one was like the worst one. At this point, you see Luffy defeated. You see Luffy just looking on ahead. He realizes in this moment, there's quite literally nothing he can do anymore. There's nothing. He just resorts into pleading with Kuma, please don't do this. Please, please, please. That's all he can do at this point. There's no more fighting him. There's no more anything. There's a kid begging for mercy. He tries to save her. He tries. He doesn't get there in time. And that's it. All the Straw Hats are gone. There's some great voice acting here. I'm not gonna lie. Luffy's voice actor knocked it out of the park. Some tears might have been shed during the scene. I'm not gonna confirm that though. Minna. The little montage of the crew joining and everything like that while being safe is playing is really, really beautiful. I'm not gonna play it here, however, because I don't want to cry while making this video. And again, I feel for Luffy not only as a crewmate, but as a leader of the crew. The fact that like he wasn't able to save just even one. I feel like if he was able to save just one of his crewmate, it would have been somewhat seen as a victory here, but he wasn't able to save just one. He lost everyone that day. He lost. And I said all the Straw Hats were gone and they lost, but Luffy was still there at the end before Kuma disappeared him eventually. And the moments leading up to that were just... yeah. Sometimes I'm lost for words, and this will be one of them again. The moment is genuinely that speechless. Like, there's not really much else to say, because the scene speaks for itself. The episode ends with the bubble bursting representing Luffy, and that's just where the episode ends. That's where Sabaody ends. And yeah, it was tough. I keep thinking back to that conversation where the Straw Hats had back in Thriller Bark when they were discussing when Luffy was unconscious, how they need to get stronger in order to fight battles, because Luffy can't keep doing this all by himself, realistically speaking. And they went into Sabaody, and I'm like, I have high hopes for this crew. Like, yes, okay, fine. They had this whole talk with themselves. They're going to be able to do this. We get to the Sabaody arc and we're thinking, yes, the crew has leveled up now. Luffy has gear 2. Sanji has his fire kicks. Let's get this. And then the arc ends in the most devastating way possible. We're just showing the Straw Hats are not ready for this. They're not ready. It was a real eye-opener for viewers of the show. Like, yes, this show is not always going to be the heroes win. It's not always going to be banquets and everything like that. There's some real shit that's going to happen in this show. And this was one of them. But yeah, guys, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This was very, very therapeutic for me to make because again, I love this episode. I love this show. So yeah, if you're new to the channel, please consider following. Please consider subscribing. It will mean really a lot to me if you did. I don't know how many One Piece videos I will make on this channel. Let's just see how this one does. It's been very fun to make. I will not lie to you at all. So again, I'll say thank you for watching this